Before you sleep tonight, I want you to imagine something strange. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing you can no longer dream. No flying through stars. No strange forests. No voices calling your name from places that don't exist. Just darkness. And then imagine something even stranger. An entire town where nobody remembered what dreaming even was. Except one child, far beyond the noisy cities and crowded highways, hidden between silent hills. There was a town called Valemere. The people there lived simple lives. They woke up at the same hour every morning, opened the same shops, walked the same streets, spoke the same careful words. Everything in Valemere felt quiet, too quiet. Even the sky looked pale, as if color itself had become tired. No one laughed too loudly, no one cried for too long, and no one ever talked about dreams, because dreams had disappeared many years ago. At first, people noticed it slowly. One by one, the townsfolk stopped dreaming in their sleep. Then, after some time, they stopped imagining things while awake too. Painters stopped painting. Writers stopped writing. Children stopped inventing games. The people of Valemere no longer wished for anything beyond tomorrow, and strangely, they seemed perfectly fine with it. All except one person. At the edge of town, beside a crooked river and an old wooden bridge, lived a 12-year-old girl named Mira. Mira was different. Every night, she dreamed, not ordinary dreams, beautiful ones. She dreamed of glowing oceans beneath silver moons, of forests where lanterns floated like fireflies, of giant libraries hidden inside mountains. Sometimes she dreamed of birds made entirely of light. And every morning, she would wake up confused because nobody else understood. Dreams? The baker would ask gently. What are those? The school teacher once smiled sadly and said, Your imagination is too active, Mira. You should sleep earlier. But Mira knew these things were real somehow, because when she dreamed, she felt alive. And lately, the dreams had started changing. Someone was calling her name inside them. Every single night. Mira, soft, distant, as though carried by the wind itself. In the center of Valemere stood an enormous clock tower, tall, silent, ancient. Nobody entered it anymore. The doors had been locked for decades. The townspeople avoided even looking at it. If you hear the tower at night, they would whisper, "Close your curtains." But one evening, after another strange dream, Mira noticed something impossible. The clock tower light was glowing. Just for a second. A warm golden light. Not gray. Not pale. Gold. That night, Mira could not sleep. Rain tapped softly against her window as the voice returned once more. Mira, come find us. She sat up immediately. Her heart trembled. Then she heard it. The clock tower bell. One single chime. The first chime anyone had heard in years. Wrapped in her old coat, Mira quietly left her house and crossed the sleeping town. The streets were empty, windows dark. The world felt frozen. When she reached the tower, the great wooden doors were slightly open, as though waiting for her. Inside, dust floated through silver moonlight. The tower smelled like old paper and rain. And at the very top, she found something impossible. A room filled with glowing glass jars. Thousands of them. Each jar shimmered with tiny moving lights. Blue, gold, violet, colors Mira had only seen in dreams. In the center of the room sat an old woman beside a lantern. She looked ancient, but her eyes were kind. "You finally came," she whispered. Mira stepped closer, carefully. "What is this place?" The old woman smiled sadly. "These," she said, touching one glowing jar, "are dreams." Mira stared in silence. The lights inside the jars moved like tiny living worlds. "Long ago," the woman continued, "the people of Valemere became afraid. Afraid of disappointment, afraid of grief, afraid of wanting things they could not keep. So slowly, they abandoned their dreams. And when enough people stopped dreaming, the town began to forget color itself." Mira's chest tightened. "That's impossible." "No," the woman whispered. "It is simply what happens when people stop imagining better worlds." The old woman introduced herself as Elira, the final dream keeper. For decades, she had protected the town's forgotten dreams inside the tower. "But the jars are fading now," Elira admitted quietly. "And when the last light disappears, this town will forget hope forever." Mira looked around the glowing room. Some jars were already dark, empty, dead. "But why can I still dream?" Mira asked. Elira smiled softly. "Because your heart stayed open." Then she handed Mira a tiny golden jar. Inside it swirled a small glowing ocean beneath moonlight. "This was yours," Elira said. "Your very first dream." Mira held the jar carefully, and suddenly she remembered running through endless stars as a child. Imaginary kingdoms. Stories she once whispered to herself before sleep. All the things the town had forgotten. Tears filled her eyes. "They deserve to remember," she whispered. Elira nodded. "Yes, but someone must wake them." The next evening, Mira climbed to the top of the clock tower alone. Cold wind moved through empty streets. A tired baker dreamed of dancing in summer fields. Children dreamed of impossible flying cities. Artists woke up with colors in their minds. Writers remembered forgotten stories. And all through the night, the gray town slowly bloomed back into color. The next morning, something unusual happened. People smiled at strangers. Flowers seemed brighter. The river reflected blue skies once more. Nobody fully understood what had changed. But deep inside, as for Mira, every night, she still visited the clock tower. And sometimes, when the wind was quiet enough, she could hear the dreams whispering softly in their jars, waiting for someone else who still believed. So, tonight, before you fall asleep, if you hear the wind outside your window, if you feel something small and hopeful stirring in your chest, maybe, just maybe,